Coming up on this episode, the Warriors get some much-needed clarity on the Giannis Antetokounmpo situation with an imminent trade potentially coming in the next 6 weeks, plus an ideal trade target that the Warriors must renew interest in if Draymond Green opts in to his player option. Welcome back to the Golden State with Mates podcast. Hope you're all having a good week. Giannis Antetokounmpo's future is back up in the air and in the media spotlight this week. And I don't think there's any coincidence the timing of this just days out from the NBA draft lottery, which could give the Golden State Warriors and other teams an answer once and for all on their ability to land a two-time MVP. It now feels like a Giannis trade is inevitable and actually maybe more imminent than what we think, because the Bucks themselves have set a clear timeline on this. Bucks owner or co-owner Jimmy Haslam quoted to the media on Wednesday that they want to resolve Giannis's future with the franchise before next month's draft. Now, along those same lines, he also said that he'd told new head coach Taylor Jenkins, or the franchise has told new head coach Taylor Jenkins, that Giannis may or may not be with us moving forward, essentially. Giannis himself, in the wake of Taylor Jenkins' hiring, has said Milwaukee are getting a great person. They're not just getting a great coach, but a great person. Why are you using Milwaukee and there instead of we? Unless you know that a trade is going to go down here in the next month, 6 weeks or so. So to me, the wording of Giannis, the very uncertain stature that Jimmy Haslam wanted to put on his future, Giannis' future that is, says to me that a trade is going to happen here before next month's draft. So that means the draft lottery on Sunday is crucial. Crucial to a team like the Warriors, who, if they want to renew interest in Giannis, we know their strong pursuit of the two-time MVP before the mid-season deadline. If they want to renew that, then to me, Sunday's draft lottery is going to give us the final answer on whether they can possibly get Giannis or not. The Warriors stay at the 11th overall pick, which they're slated to do. That's their expectations. They go into the draft 11th with the 11th best odds of the number one overall pick. If they can't jump into the top four, which they have a 9.4% chance of doing, I don't see how they have enough to get a Giannis trade done unless Giannis says, I specifically want to go to the Warriors. And this Giannis stuff has been going on for 12 months now, let's say, since last offseason, where we heard the murmurs of his interest in going to the Knicks. Talk about that more in a second. But throughout this whole period, not once have we heard that Giannis wants to go to the Warriors. It's all been about Golden State's interest in Giannis. And yes, the Warriors have an interesting package when it comes to future picks and stuff like that. Yes, they could do the salary matching with Jimmy Butler, which would be different to what they tried to do mid-season, where they were trying to package Draymond and Kuminga together, perhaps with another salary, throw all the picks in there, whatever. Sounded like Milwaukee didn't really want a part in that. They were more interested. Shams Charania reported last month that the Miami Heat, the deal that was on the table from the Heat was the one that the Bucks most considered. And so with the Heat having more picks at their disposal, other teams coming in with disappointing playoff exits, other teams with more picks at their disposal, it feels to me as if the Warriors are going to be behind the eight ball here when it comes to trying to put a package together for Giannis. Again, unless he specifically expresses a desire to come to Golden State, which again, he hasn't done at all in the last 12 months. So therefore, the only way the Warriors can try and push themselves back to the front of the queue is Sunday's draft lottery. Because if you do land a top four pick and which you have a 9.4% chance of, if you can do that, then suddenly things completely change in the eyes of the Milwaukee Bucks. Already heard and read a couple of Bucks experts who have talked about this and said that the Warriors don't really have an appetizing package unless they get a top four pick. If we get access to one of the top four guys in the draft, Dybanster, Peterson, Boozer, Caleb Wilson, whoever it is, whatever top four pick it is, doesn't matter if it's 1, 2, 3, or 4, obviously one would be ideal. But if that was the case, then sure, Golden State's package suddenly becomes very, very interesting. I'm not even sure if the Warriors would be willing to give up a top 4 pick for Giannis. Just knowing the history of Joe Lacob, his desire to be still very successful post Stephen Curry. We've seen what's happened with James Wiseman, Jonathan Kuminga. I'm not convinced that Joe Lacob would give up a top 4 pick for Giannis. But regardless, if they did get a top 4 pick, then suddenly it obviously becomes a lot more intriguing to a team like the Bucks. It's really fascinating because I still do think Giannis has a say in all of this, a strong say in all of this, because he is entering the final year of his final guaranteed year of his contract. So he can dictate where he wants to go somewhat. But I think he might have enough respect for the Bucks as a franchise to not just say, I want to go to New York only. Do not send me anywhere else. I will not sign an extension with anyone else. Like, I think there's probably going to be a few teams on his wish list, and he'll say, all right, here's a short list of teams I want to go to. Whatever best deal you can get, fair enough, right? Like, I think he has enough respect for the Bucks to kind of say that. Now, it's going to be interesting. Should teams, whoever it is, whether it's the Warriors, whether it's whatever team it is, should they have to pay a premium price for Giannis? Because I think the price from what it was mid-season, when the Bucks weren't really interested in a trade, the price should have only gone down. One, because it sounds like Milwaukee are more interested in a trade right now. Two, the injury concerns. Like, the dude played 35 games this season and has had like multiple soft tissue injuries, including calf injuries, which are just never great. He's 31 years old, still an elite player, don't get me wrong, right? Superstar, arguably top 3 player in the league. But the dude did play only 35 games this season. Okay. But I'm not convinced that the price will actually go down because I think there will be more bidders. Again, there's going to be more teams with more assets to utilize in a potential trade or put together in a package. There's going to be teams that have disappointing playoff exits. And this is why, if I'm the Warriors, I'm sitting back. I'm not in the playoffs, eliminate the play-in tournament. Sitting back, I'm thinking, who do you want to win the championship right now? And to me, as a Warrior fan, if you want Golden State to trade for Giannis Antetokounmpo, then I'm absolutely rooting for the New York Knicks. First of all, like, do we really want a Western Conference rival winning the championship? I think that's most likely. I think the Thunder are clearly the best team yet. The Spurs might be the second best team yet, right? Most likely we're going to see a champion in the West. Do we really want that as Warrior fans? I don't really care about it too much. But again, if you want the Warriors to trade for Giannis, then you'd be rooting for the Knicks. Absolutely rooting for the Knicks. Because part of the desire for Giannis is to bring a championship to New York after over 50 years. Bring a title to MSG. And I understand that. That would be unbelievable and fantastic. Guess what? You lose that completely if the Knicks go and win a championship right now. And we saw the backlash that KD got when he came to the Warriors after the Warriors lost in the finals to the Cavs and winning a championship the year prior. I think Giannis is smart enough to know, hey, if the Knicks win the championship or even go all the way to the finals, is it the best look for my career if I then go and jump on the Knicks? Is it? I think he's smart enough to know that's not necessarily the case. So I think it's impossible, like genuinely impossible, for the Knicks to win the championship this year, then trade for Giannis Antetokounmpo. I just don't think that's possible. And so if I'm the Warriors and I'm sitting back and thinking, you know what? The Knicks still have the upper hand on every other team here because they are the team we know Giannis has an interest in playing for. Everyone else, the Warriors included, haven't really heard too much about it. Jake Fisher, the Stein Line, reported on Thursday that the desire for Giannis to bring a championship to the Knicks is still very strong. And again, I read that and I think they've still got an upper hand on every other team, regardless of the trade package. That's the team Giannis, we've heard, wants to go to. So if I'm the Warriors, you're a Warrior fan that wants the franchise to trade for Giannis, just go for the Knicks. Go for the New York Knicks. If that's not enough of a reason, Mike Brown's the coach, obviously ties to the Warriors. So it's going to be fascinating to see what happens at the lottery. Because the top 4 pick, you throw that in with Jimmy's contract, you throw that in with pods, throw that in with other picks. How far do you want to go? Again, wouldn't be shocked if Joe Lacob says, no, I'm going to keep this top 4 pick because I think I can get a future star that I can have for the next 15 years with one of these top 4 picks. Wouldn't surprise me. But from a Bucks perspective, the Warriors' offer becomes so much more intriguing if Golden State land a top 4 pick. Let me know what you think. Are the Warriors a genuine chance at Giannis? Do you want them to be a genuine chance at Giannis? Would you want them to throw the top 4 pick in if they land it for Giannis? Or would you prefer them take the futuristic route and look at life after Steph Curry? The issue for the Warriors with Giannis or Kawhi or KD or any superstar player is that you are still making the brutal decision of having to trade Jimmy Butler unless you work out some kind of double sign and trade with KP and Draymond. It gets too complicated. Any trade the Warriors make for a player making over $40+ million essentially has to include Jimmy Butler, which is why if the Warriors, as they've have been so adamant on keeping Jimmy, I've been like shopping in the areas of the like $25 to $35 million players, which if that's the case, the Warriors still have one ideal trade target that they should be renewing interest in at that price point. Talking, of course, about Trey Murphy III. You can give me your Aaron Gordon, you can give me your Derek White, and those guys do have championship experience, right? But they're also on the older end of the spectrum. If the Warriors want to go a little bit younger, feel a huge need, get a second offensive option for Steph Curry immediately starting next season before Jimmy returns, Trey Murphy III is still the guy. And I know I've spoken about him a lot on this podcast over the past at least 12 months, it must be said. But this guy's making $27 million on the second year of a 4-year deal next season. That aligns perfectly with Draymond Green and his $27.6 million player option. Now, I've said it before and I'll say it again. I don't expect Draymond to pick that one up. I think that he'll opt out and re-sign with the franchise on a multi-year deal at a much lesser number. However, the Warriors could make it very difficult for Draymond and say, look, we're just not giving you a new deal. You either pick up that player option or you don't. And then I think if I'm Draymond in that situation, I'm probably just picking up the player option because I know there's probably not a deal out there for me that's going to be better than that. There's clearly not going to be a deal out there better than that from an annual salary point. But even then, I'm not sure how many teams in for agency would be giving Draymond like 3 years, 50 or anything like that. I just don't think that would be out there. So the Warriors could still force Draymond into picking up that player option, but that would probably deteriorate the relationship between the two a little bit, which would be problematic, I suppose. But they could force him into it, which could then allow them to trade him for a guy like Trey Murphy III. Now, the problem here is what interest does the Pelicans hold in Draymond Green? They just wouldn't. Like, not on their timeline, not an on-court fit whatsoever with Zion Williamson. Like, that's absolutely disgusting. Spoken about Zion as a potential target for the Warriors previously. And it's like, well, you can't have Zion while you still have Draymond. Just impossible. And so if you're the Pelicans, you have no interest in Draymond Green. Maybe there's some kind of 3-team trade that could be worked out there where it's Draymond plus a bunch of picks for Trey Murphy III. Because, again, if we're shopping in that price point of saying we're keeping Jimmy Butler, we don't want to expend him and a heap of picks and assets for Giannis or for Kawhi or whoever it may be, KD, whoever it may be at that kind of $40+ million bracket. Trey Murphy III, $27 million next season. That is a gettable salary for the Warriors to get to while keeping Jimmy Butler. And it feels a need for Golden State that is a glaring problem for them right now. And I'm quoting ESPN's Anthony Slater there on a recent episode he did with Tim Kawakami on the TK show, looking at the Denver Nuggets and their loss of Aaron Gordon and Peyton Watson and the amount of issues they had in the first round series against Minnesota with the youth and athleticism. Jaden McDaniels obviously had a huge series for Minnesota. Looking at Denver's struggles there on the wing in the forward positions, and that's an area the Warriors have to address this offseason, regardless of who it is. Really, like, they need probably a starting quality wing and at least try and provide some depth in that area, because right now you look at what's happened over the past since January, this calendar year, in the first 5 months of this year. Jimmy Butler, torn ACL, gone for, I don't know, half of next season. Trade away Jonathan Kuminga, your most elite athlete, at least. We know JK struggles and stuff like that, but he's an elite athlete, right? No doubt about that. You trade him for a 7'3" Kristaps Porzingis. Yes, you get some size there, but Kristaps not the most athletic bloke in the world, particularly after his injury concerns and health issues. And then your primary 3-and-D wing who shot over 40% from three on high volume this season, Moses Moody, has a brutal, devastating torn patella tendon injury in late March. Doubts on whether he's going to play at all next season. So suddenly you trade Kuminga, you lose Butler and Moody. You're going into next season with what exactly? Kind of the wing forward positions. Guy Santos, great development story, and I'm really looking forward to what Guy can do next season. But you don't want to be going into next campaign with just him. Are you bringing Draymond back? He doesn't like Draymond. Steve said like he's almost a better center at this point than he is like a forward. So where do the Warriors go here in terms of that position? That is a glaring problem, right? And we've seen in the league, we've seen in the playoffs right now that you need some youth, you need some athleticism, you need some size on the wing. Otherwise, it's just really, really difficult to compete. And it's an area the Warriors have struggled to really address in recent years. The Jimmy acquisition, huge, obviously. And I think not just Jimmy himself, right, in terms of his influence, but what that brought to the Warriors in terms of that specific type of player and the ability to make his teammates better and stuff like that was obviously huge prior to January's injury. So if I'm looking at Trey Murphy III right now, it is like we've always seen Trey Murphy III as like an ideal trade target for the Warriors for multiple reasons. But that's even more so now in the wake of Jimmy and Moody's injuries and after trading Kuminga. Like Trey Murphy III is like almost more important to the Warriors. And I'm sure the Pelicans would probably prey on that and say, hang on, you really need this guy. You just give us everything, right? You give us all the picks. I do wonder if the Warriors, again, let's go back to the draft lottery. If the Warriors landed a top 4 pick, would you trade a top 4 pick for Trey Murphy III and say, all right, Draymond's going to opt in and we're going to trade Draymond and a top 4 pick for Trey Murphy III and nothing else is involved. No other future picks. If I'm the Pelicans and I'm the Warriors, both teams have a really interesting conversation on that because the Pelicans probably say, you know what, an ability to just reset slightly. We think one of these top 4 guys can be a better player than Trey Murphy III. And then if you're the Warriors, you're like, we also believe that. We think that one of these top 4 guys could probably become a better, like Trey Murphy III, for as good as he is now, highly I'm speaking of him, the dude's never made an All-Star game, never even sniffed maybe an All-Star game in his first 5 seasons. If you're going to make an All-Star team or make multiple All-Star teams, you probably do it by this stage of your career, right? So I don't think there's any doubt that the Pelicans would have some serious interest in a trade like that. And the Warriors could talk themselves into it by saying, okay, we're giving up a guy who might be a better player in the future, but guess what? Like, we're helping Steph Curry right now. We end next season with a combination of Steph Curry, Jimmy Butler, Trey Murphy III. Perhaps we can re-sign Kristaps Porzingis in free agency. We've still got Moody. We've still got Pods. You see what you can do in free agency. Who knows? Maybe you go out and get LeBron James. I don't know. Like, that would be an interesting team. A really interesting team. Particularly like that first 4, I suppose, with Steph, Jimmy, Trey, and KP. And that, I think, more aligns with what today's payrolls look like. Because I just don't see, there's just no world to me. There was at the midseason deadline because they were trying to trade Draymond and Kuminga for Giannis and potentially even Kawhi when they were showing interest in him. Like, there was a world in which the Warriors were suddenly going to have 3 dudes making $55 to $60 million a year with Steph, Jimmy, and Giannis, for example. Now, because they've traded Kuminga for KP's going to be a free agent. Draymond's got this player option. It's just way too difficult to have a situation where the Warriors are going into next season with Steph, Jimmy, and like Giannis or Kawhi or KD or whoever it may be making over $40+ million a year. It's just not going to happen. So the more sustainable approach here is two guys making max money, Steph, Jimmy, and hoping that those two guys, particularly Jimmy coming off a torn ACL, will take less in 2027 free agency. Don't think there's any doubt about that. Like, you hope that Steph might take the max. I would be going to Steph and saying, can you take a little bit less for me? Like, Joe Lacombe's going to do that, right? Joe Lacombe's going to do that. Jimmy, it's like, you're coming off a torn ACL. There's no way we can pay you $55, $60 million. No chance. You're going to take a significant pay cut, hopefully. But at least just for next season's roster, those two making basically max money. Trey Murphy III making $27 million. Maybe you bring KP back on like $20 million. See how things go. Potentially that becomes a trade chip. And then, like, if you're giving up the top 4 pick for Trey Murphy III, that's a complete hypothetical. The Warriors have a less than 1 in 10 chance of landing a top 4 pick on Sunday. But that actually allows you, like, you've made that move for Trey Murphy III. Again, see how things go. And then you've still got all your future picks to use in another trade down the line. You still have incredible trade flexibility, both from a salary standpoint, it must be said, and obviously your future picks and future draft capital and stuff like that. And then with Trey Murphy III, if you're Joe Lacob, you're like, well, I've got a guy here who's a 20 to 22 point per game scorer right now, who's averaging 5-6 rebounds a game, who's shown a little bit with his passing and playmaking, career high in assists this season. Unbelievable 3-point shooter on high volume, elite athlete who can get to the rim. This is a guy who might not be like the absolute face of a franchise after Steph, but like could be a secondary guy on a reasonable team, right? If your number one is elite. Now, again, maybe the Warriors think we could get that number one guy from the top 4 pick, right? But then again, how much are you expecting that guy to come in and be like comparative to Trey Murphy III immediately next season when you're trying to give Steph Curry another chance at a title? So I think that's a really interesting conversation to have if the Warriors were to jump into the top 4. And I think the overall kind of point to this is that if the Warriors do get incredibly lucky, if they do jump into a top 4 pick, that just opens the horizon to so many different things that they could possibly do on the trade market. But it will also create so much more decision making in terms of that, and in terms of, hey, do we just look somewhat at the future and take the top 4 pick, whatever it may be, 1, 2, 3, or 4? You're going to get like an A grade star level prospect with one of those picks. So Trey Murphy III, to me, because of the contract more than anything else, remains like the ideal trade target to me for the Warriors, because in today's day and age, like, this is how you want your payroll to be set up. And if the Warriors are adamant that they want to keep Jimmy Butler, which they're saying that publicly, I think privately, if they could trade Jimmy for Giannis, that's something I think they would do. Would they trade Jimmy and picks for KD and get back into like the KD situation? I have more hesitancy on that. Would they trade him for Kawhi? I have a bit more hesitancy on that. We'll wait and see. But Sunday's draft lottery is certainly going to be interesting. Going to be finishing up there, guys. Thank you very much for tuning in. I'll be back after Sunday's lottery with a reaction to that from a Warriors standpoint, and of course the other teams with so much going on around the league. If you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel already, that would be greatly appreciated. You can follow me at POK252. That's POK252 on X/Twitter, and I'll see you on the next episode.